Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show to talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Wheel of Time. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Egwene and Perrin as they're traveling with, I'm going to butcher what their name is, but I think they call themselves, I guess like a translated thing would be like, the Tinkerers is kind of like what their other name is. I don't know if that's like the more like derogatory like name for them, but the traveling caravan that they're with, and even parents kind of unsure about them. It's like, how can we really trust them? I even love Aram being like, yeah, if you guys were bandits, you came here in rags and you had no gold on you. If you were bandits, you're terrible bandits, so you can stick with us as long as you want to. And we kind of learn more about their ways. They're pacifists, essentially. It's been ingrained in their people for like 1,000 years, because especially Aram's mom, grandmother, Ila, talks about it. God, what was I thinking? Oh, right. Kind of telling Perrin her story, because it's like, well, because she had talked about, like, you know, has your life been better or worse since picking up a weapon? And obviously for him, it was worse because he killed Lila, and, you know, and how much that haunts him. And obviously it's not the easiest thing to do, but for her, it's all worth it. Putting that, like, convincing two people to put violence behind them. It's like, it's not going to be the end all be all. It's going to take some time. But she's like, if I can inspire two people who eventually inspire two people of their own, so on and so forth, then maybe in the end it'll be worth it. Because she's like, I don't do it for me. I don't do it for my people. I do it for my daughter. Her daughter who was killed by a bandit. Not that she had anything of value. The only thing she had of value was her life. And the bandit killed her just for sport. And Perrin talks about, like, you know, because, like, she's like, she held her daughter's body wanting revenge, but the greatest revenge to violence is peace. The greatest revenge to death is life. And so she comes at it from this perspective of, and I think that's going to be an important part for Perrin going forward, because it's not, you know, because for Perrin, it's like, right, just choosing the path of, you know, because it's known as like the way of the, it's like a way of the leaf, essentially. Like I said, it's kind of fascinating, which once again, me being who I am now, I'm like, when I think leaf, I'm thinking the 8 leaves, 1 blade, trails cold steel thing. But it's not about running away. It's about just kind of embracing something else, like trying to find a better way, essentially, finding a different path in life. And I think that's going to be necessary for Perrin, because I think going forward, he's going to be like the pacifist, maybe potentially. I mean, using another reference would be like The Walking Dead, like Morgan. But we saw how that worked for Morgan. He didn't want to just kill people anymore. Granted, we see where Morgan is now, so I feel like Perrin might end up going down a route like that. Like, he might choose to put down the weapon, but because even it's like, when it comes to people attacking, because they don't actually have weapons, it's like, if we try to run, and if we can't, we try to endure. It's like, wait, you just let yourself be killed. It's like, you know, because for them, it's essentially we die, we give back to the earth, and then, like, it's like a leaf, if it dies, it gives nutrients, and then a tree is grown and the leaf is kind of reborn again. It kind of fits the theming of, like, what the wheel represents to them in general in this world, in this universe. So, and that was a thing for her as well. It's like, she's hoping that one day her daughter, you know, past Aram's grandchildren, that her daughter's soul will be spun back into the world again, and she'll be able to live the life that I'm helped in my own small part to eventually lead to the world becoming a better place, and my daughter will be able to live the life she should have been able to live with me in peace, and live her life to the fullest instead of it being cut short the way it was. So I thought that was really interesting. And we also got the moments between Egwene and Aram, where we talked about we finally got context to what the song is. The song is a song that his people sung, like, at the end of the last age, that basically was supposed to inspire in peace, and was supposed to make everyone dance and enjoy, and you know, peace was supposed to be instilled upon everyone. But for him, it's like, this song was lost at the end of the last age, and now it's like, they're still trying to get it back, because they're like, right, if we can find it again, then maybe we can sing this song that will spread peace. But then even Gwen's like, how do you know you haven't already found it? Because she looks around at everyone in the caravan of like how happy they are and how peaceful it is. So it's like, I think it gave Aram a different perspective on things. But they also talked about what, and I could be remembering this wrong. I can never remember. Is it Rushpinga? Rushpinga. I'm butchering it. Is it Rumspringa? I think it's Rumspringa. Like I said, I'm butchering it. I keep saying it wrong each time I know. But it's essentially, if I'm not using the wrong name, there's the tradition in the Amish tradition of basically when your children turn 18, you send them out in the world. You get to do whatever you want to for like a certain amount of time, and you get to decide whether or not you're coming back to the Amish lifestyle and whether or not it's for you. And the same thing happens amongst their people. They have something like that, but when you're 20, you go out there, and he talks about different people have like picked up different things. Like, and even said, I thought was interesting, he was like, some people go and pick up arms. I'm like, oh, that's interesting considering your people are peaceful people, and to know that, but I guess it's like that path isn't for everyone. So like, you know, the path, this way of life is for everyone. It welcomes you in, but you know, if you want to leave, you can leave too. And he, Aram said, like, most people come back, just like I think in the Amish community, most people do come back, but there are people who leave and don't come back. But Aram was saying, like, right, like the leaf can't control, like, you gotta basically, you go with the flow of things. It's kind of what the leaf represents, of like, you go where the wind carries you, and if it brings you back here, cool. If it doesn't, that's your path in life, that's your destiny. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting insight, learning about their like how they operate in that regard. So there's that side of things. So I'm curious to see where that kind of takes him, because Aram and I keep saying his name differently every time. Sorry, Aram and Gwen also talked about, like, you know, Rand, because it's like, oh, who's the man who's captured your heart? Like, is he going? And she's like, no. If he was, I would know. So I thought that was kind of a fascinating thing. I wonder, is Perrin going to, like, he might not stay with him, because I don't think he'll have much of a choice, because him and Egwene being potentially the dragon reborn, it's like they're going to like draw attention, just like obviously everything with Tom, Matt, and Rand, but we'll get to that in a second. So they can't stay with them forever, and I think the times are going to come when they have to leave, but I think we'll be getting to that sadly soon enough. But speaking of Tom, Matt, and Rand is kind of distrustful, because it's like, right, what if Tom killed Dana last episode just to get our trust? And even Matt's kind of like, oh, that's you being smart, because I guess, like, the fact is that Rand is kind of being distrustful of people, because I guess, like, Matt's the one that's kind of like, because of just the nature of, like, how he's lived his life, he's always been the suspicious type. So I think for him to be like, oh, Rand, well, to be fair, Rand has kind of became more and more like that, especially, like, towards Moraine and everything. So I think for him to be like, yeah, thinking out far ahead, like, yeah, maybe Tom is, but it's like, right, like, because it's also their own good terms, because they kind of worked everything out, because it's like, yeah, first time we met him, he stole our money, but they come across a family. Rand was honest with them, and it's like, right, we were just going to sleep in your barn, because things had started getting a little off, because, like, Matt's horse was acting weird. I was like, oh, because usually the horses are, like, sensitive to this type of stuff. Like, they're usually aware, just like Shadow's Waiting. Like, they did not want to go there, just like the Trollocs didn't. So I was wondering if there was something similar, but when you think about it in retrospect, it's like, no one else's horse was acting like that, only Matt's. And then at first I was wondering if it was related to that dagger he picked up. It seemed like that might have something to do with it in some shape or form. Like, I don't know if that, like, I don't know if that's adding more fuel to the fire or whatever it is, but like the way he's been, like, irritable lately and just kind of off, Tom talks to him. It's like because you see at one point, like, he's puking and the black stuff comes off in his mouth. And I was like, isn't that the stuff from Shadow's Way? And that's what I was like, could this be from him stealing that dagger? Like, that's why I'm like, I think there might be a contributing angle to it. But what Tom talks about is, your friend is developing powers. He's tapped into the one power. And you're like, oh, interesting. And we already know what that does to men. It drives them mad. And it, like, because basically, what was it? Tom had a nephew, Owen, who went through the same thing, and the Aes Sedai come, particularly the ones in red, which we'll get to that later, came and took the power from him. But it's like, and they leave. you live after the power is taken from you, but like once you've had a taste of that power, like nothing in life afterwards matters. It's like you're always going, it basically hollows you out, because like once you've tasted such a power like that, there's no going back to a normal life. So he talks about the fact is that Owen just yawned one, like weeks later, yawned, and in the same breath slit his throat like it was nothing. It's like he had nothing to live for anymore. Like it's just like that being taken from that power taken from you, what it does to you, but also having that power, what it does to you, it drives you insane. Because basically the Dark One in the last age basically corrupted the power. So because I guess that was the Dark One's way to like make it so that like women he couldn't stop them from getting power, but if men ever got it, he could, I guess, like corrupt them and turn them into kind of almost like, not necessarily that they'd work for him, but at least it would allow that power to be used against them, because men would be driven insane. Which that element plays a big role in this episode too, but we'll circle back to that. So it's like, right, you do not want the Aes Sedai to get to your friend, because you don't want that to happen to Matt. And the sad thing is, they're literally heading towards the White Tower, so it's like you're going to be surrounded by them. But I think I think now we've seen slowly but surely, I think each one of them has displayed the fact is that they've tapped into the power, the one power. Egwene did, Rand busting down that door last episode, everything between Perrin and the Wolves, now everything with Matt. But his has kind of displayed itself in a darker manner than anyone else's, because like I said, like he has that darkness like oozing from his mouth. Rand had that dream, and I think the fact is we don't know if anyone else like had that dream, because they never cut to anyone necessarily having it, but he saw Perrin like bashing, which I don't know if that was supposed to be Lila's body, so I don't know if that's supposed to be a little bit of a hint of like his guilt over that. Matt kind of lost, I guess, kind of succumbed to the power, and then you have Egwene being grabbed by what once I continue to think is the Dark One. But the moment he woke up, because it's sad, because Matt bonded with the little girl, because the little girl, the youngest, she reminded him of his sisters. And it's like, she gave him a doll that's like, yeah, this will kind of protect you. And it's like, no, I want you to keep it. She's like, no. Besides, she wants to go, potentially go out there and see the world. So, because it's like, oh, your sisters, he's like, oh, they're safe back home with your mom and dad. And he had to hesitate, because it's like, he knows his siblings aren't going to be okay, because his parents are a mess. But then like when Tom and Rand walked in on him, I was like, did Matt snap and kill everybody? But it was like, no, he didn't do it. Still have to be wary of that. But it was the Fade. It came in and slaughtered that entire family, even a little girl. You're like, Jesus. Because they're not called, they're not faceless. They're the eyeless, right? Wasn't that their names? Or was it the face? I don't think it was. Because when I think of faceless, I'm also, once again, Trails. I'm thinking of Weissman. But regardless, like that's what I'm kind of forgetting. But we'll just refer to them as Fade. So it's like, right. So they just like pop in and out of the darkness. I wonder, can they just do that anywhere? Or is it just because of the cloak's proximity? Like, do they always travel in the darkness? I'm curious. I wonder, does like... Well, because every time we've seen them, it's never been during the day. So I wonder, does sunlight actually hurt them and they hide out till then? Like, Tom is, because I thought it was interesting, because Rand was like, knowing what you know, Tom, there's no way you're just some Gleeman. He's like, Gleeman is a silly name to cover the fact is that nothing's more dangerous than the man who remembers the past. I was like, ooh, I love that line. But it's like, yeah, we give ourselves silly names, but we always remember history. We know what the past is, because having knowledge of the past makes you dangerous, because you obviously know what to kind of fight against, what to recognize, what your knowledge is power. So knowing about the past can be a dangerous thing, So, luckily Matt and Rand were able to get away from the Fade as Tom held it off. So, yeah, he ain't just some regular bloke. Like, he held himself pretty nicely against the Fade from what we saw. I doubt we've seen the last of Tom, but we'll have to wait and see where things kind of go from there. And on the flip side, we have Nynaeve, Lan, and as well as Moraine. Now, the reason why I brought it up earlier about the Aes Sedai, now we know that basically the Aes Sedai, there's at least like 4 different, there's a ranking system, because there's like, what was it, Amarin Seat, I guess that's like, I guess that's like the head Aes Sedai, I wonder how that's decided. Like, is it a thing of like you work your way up to that? It sounds like there's only one, but it's like, how do you become that? Like, is someone chosen? Do you work your way up to that? Like, is it a position you hold until you die? Like, I was also curious, like, do the Aes Sedai like age differently, or do they have like normal human lifespans or something? Like, questions like that. Once again, probably get those answers soon enough. But we learned that, like, obviously there's a ranking, because, like, obviously there's the Amaranth seat, but there's also, like, you know, because Moraine and Alana were talking about being novices. Like, novices can't have pets. But the colors represent different things. Reds are the ones who basically go out. They're kind of almost like the hunters. They're the ones that kind of go out to kind of keep some balance in the world. They kind of protect the world. So that they're the main ones. They're the hunters sent out to kind of track down those who would pose a threat. Potentially that being men who end up getting power, who tap into the power of the one power. Then you have blues like Moraine, who are basically kind of like spies, and you have the greens, who are basically supposed to, like, they help in every other regard, but their main duty is when the last battle is to come, they're supposed to be on the forefront of it all. Because Alana had talked about, like, she chose green for that particular reason, but now reality's kind of sinking in of, like, all that she's starting to witness, you know, potentially the dragon being reborn. It's like, right, we are nearing the end of this age, meaning the last battle is going to be coming. But like Moraine's like, I'm happy to have someone as powerful as you on our side. But it's like, yeah, it just sinks into reality of, like, right, the choice that you make. So it's interesting too. You can also, like, I wonder, is it like, do they also allow you to do that because, like, you're able, because it sounds like you can choose which path you want to take, but also it seems, because it doesn't seem like it's oh, you're sorted like a Harry Potter house, you know, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw type of thing. It doesn't seem like it's that, like, oh, which affinity you lean more towards. It seems like you get to choose which route you decide to go as an Aes Sedai. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Because we're also getting that view of things from Nynaeve. Because Nynaeve, like, kept her distance. Like, in the encampment, she just kind of stayed on the outside. And, what was her name? Lindarin came to her. Because it seemed like everyone wants to talk about, like, Moraine. I guess because, like, Moraine is, like, this... Maybe just because she's one of the few blues we've seen. Everyone else is either red or green. So maybe there's not that many blues. Maybe most people don't take that position, but Moraine did. So she acts as a spy, but she's also not one to talk much. Because even Corrine was trying to talk to her, and her ward, Stefan was kind of like, hey, like, are you trying to get any, like, words out of her? Like, you're just trying to, yeah, like, everyone tried to pump her for information. And even when Moraine was talking to Alana, she was like, no, I'm not trying to pump you for information. It'll be another day or two when you least suspect it. And she was like, okay, I see how it is. You know, like, she was so open and front. They were joking about it. But I guess, like, Moraine is probably the most secretive of the Aes Sedai. Like, not many people probably know what's going through her head. Probably the only person that really knows her that well is Lan, but even, you know... And so I think they're kind of a fitting pair in that regard. But we also got a really interesting insight into understanding, you know, because Nynaeve had brought it up last episode, her thoughts about, like, the relationship between a ward and Aes Sedai in their ward. Because it also seems like, because Alana had joked about the fact is the reason why she chose to be a green is because also it seems like you get more than one ward. I guess they're warded, like, because of what their role is, they get more than one ward because they're so important, because you're going to be necessary in the last battle. So she chose not to be bound to just one. Like, I don't know if just blues are the only ones that's bound to just one, or even the reds are just bound to one. Like, she seemed like the only one we really saw that had more than one. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. But it's like, right, do you know what Aes Sedai means in the old tongue? It means servant to all. Because it's like, right, we're not servants to the Aes Sedai. The Aes Sedai themselves are servants to the world. They do all that they do because they're the ones that keep balance. Their purpose is to serve the world. And it's like, then what does that make you guys? And then Lan just says proud, you know? So it's really sweet, because it's like, right, like, we consider ourselves proud just to fight alongside of them because they do everything. They give their all for this world. And if we can be just a small part of that, if we can do what it takes to be there for them. Because the way Stefan put it, it's like the relationship between a ward and their Aes Sedai is... it should be, oh, wait, you get what I'm trying to say, is closer than a husband and wife, mother and child. Like, there's probably, like, no real, like, definition of that relationship. And I even think it's, like, you know, Moraine and Lan, where they're sitting down, and he's like, oh, I shouldn't have had that drink, because when I drink, you get emotional. And she kind of laughs. And she even says, like, right, your losses are my losses. You know, because she's like, 20 years we've been searching for the Dragon Reborn, and we lost him. And he's like, no, I lost him. He's like, no, like, you know, your losses are my losses, you know? So whether or not they did anything, and that's why I'm also curious, because it seemed like they might be setting up the fact is that Nynaeve might, because she had her misconceptions about everything and everyone. I mean, Liandrin, she can kind of see through, because she was like, oh, that woman's kind of a bit of a snake, isn't she? It's like, yeah. Because obviously this all deals with Logain, which he calls himself the Dragon Reborn. We saw him conquer, like, well, he presented, like, he's got, like, and I love how when we got him in the opening, like, those voices talking to him, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I guess that was the madness, and maybe that's, I'm curious what it was that he thought was talking to him. Was that, you know, the power inside of him being like, yeah, you need to, because it was saying like, oh, you need to kill this king, but he's like, no, like, I have my role to play in this world. Like, he's like, even the Aes Sedai are afraid of me, and it's like, they shouldn't be, but it is something they don't understand. But he's like, they shouldn't be afraid of me. We should be working together. He's like, the last dragon broke the world. He's like, I'm going to save it. And he's like, there's a place by those who follow me, and even for my enemies. And so that king, as well as many others, like the guy, Logain, has gained a following. People follow him, and now the Aes Sedai, like, basically have to seal him away. They basically put a shielding around him, so they cut him off from the power. They use it to, like, even plug his ears, because I guess it's like, if he can't hear anything, he can't get a tune, like, he can't, because I guess it's to keep the madness away to some extent, but also, like, I guess, like, by hearing, you kind of tap into the power through all your senses. So if you're able to block all of them, you prevent that so he's not able to tap into the power, but it takes such a strain, because, like, Moraine doesn't sense anything from him being the dragon. It's like, no, like, they've already found their force. Like, there's no way he's one of them. He's powerful, yes, and they've never felt anything like this, because even at the moment they're, like, pushing him back, it's like, even then, this is a fraction of his power. So, because Liandrin wants to, Liandrin, she wants to go ahead and, like judge him, but it's like, no, the Amaranth seat wants us to bring him back, but she's like, it's going to be like 100 miles. Do you really think we can keep this up? It's like, we might as well, like, gentle him right now. And it's like, I guess gentle is their word of just like gentling you by, like, taking away the power and basically hollowing you out, because you're basically, as like we discussed before, you will just be nothing more than kind of a husk afterwards. You'll be alive, but, you know, you just won't be the same as you were with the power. So, and I guess they like, obviously, like, they were all taking ships, and it was taking its toll on them. Because, and I thought it was so interesting, because Kareen was the one that kind of said, like, right, the laws don't just apply to him, it applies to us. Like, we have to do what we have to do. Like, we can't just make the decision, you know, to, like, kill him, to gentle him just because we want to. It's like, you out of anyone, Liandrin, it's like, I shouldn't be the one to tell you. As a red, you should be telling me that. You know, so they have their laws that they have to abide by as Aes Sedai. And so, at first I was wondering, did someone help him escape? But it seems like, no, he just did it on his own. I guess it's like, right, they were all, like, getting worn down, plus his army eventually caught up to them. Really quickly, I should also talk about, like, obviously Lan ends up praying, and he does it because he's like, oh, 7 times for, like, the home that he lost. And Nynaeve says this prayer, and it's like, it's something her mom told her long ago, and he actually translates it for her, and it's like, it's what the king of Martin, I'm butchering, I always forget the places. It's the place that Twin Rivers was beforehand. It's what the king said to his wife when they knew that they were going to lose. That essentially it was, we will go to the land, we will basically become a part of the land, we will die and rest in the land, but our children will always be able to hug us and they will never be alone. And I thought it's a very like sweet and beautiful messaging of like we will always be a part of the earth. That way, like our kids could always feel close to us and it's all going to be okay. And, but like I said, like Nynaeve spending time with all of them, and like she had her misconceptions about, I think, both, you know, wards as well as the Aes Sedai, just because of her experience with like her mentor, how the Aes Sedai treated, like, so she had a like chip on her shoulder, but especially Lan, like she saw a different side of him. That's what almost seems like there's something there that I'm curious about. It seemed like they were developing like immediately, like there might be something there, but right, Loghain's people come to free him, and everyone's fending him off, and then Loghain breaks free. And Moiraine talks to him, and I love that line of him being like, it's like, right, the voices you think are talking to you think they're, you know, because he said a line that gave me context for a question I had before. And I was wondering whether, like, the dragon was like the previous dragon and this dragon are the only dragons that were existing. That's what I was curious about. No, the dragon is literally the Avatar. Basically, like, he's like, oh, like, the whispers I'm hearing are the 1,000 previous eyes. So I was like, that's who he thinks he's hearing, when in actuality, it's the madness manifesting itself, because he believes himself to be something greater. So it, like, whether that's some, like, because I'm curious, like, how the madness manifests itself. Like, what it represents, like, will it make you hear what it thinks you want to hear? Like, that, I mean, that's probably the easiest way to, like, control your sanity, is by pretending like, you know, kind of like a very Shang-Chi situation of, spoilers, a certain character was hearing someone that was very dear to him, and that was used to manipulate him. So maybe it's a similar thing in this regard of like, you want to be this greater purpose, you want to be this hero, so you believe it's the previous dragons talking to you, like the Avatar can speak to the previous avatars. And so but it's like, yeah, he's like the 1,000 dragons before me. So the dragons have always existed. It's not until the last one that broke the world, and now this dragon is supposed to save it. So, you know, and, you know, this is supposed to be the end of this age and the beginning of a new one. Once again, the end is the beginning. Like, even if there are no, like, there is no, like, definitive beginning, there are, like, new beginnings, but it, you know, once again, it's the Ouroboros thing of, like, where does things really start, where is the end? It's kind of, once again, it's the whole point of, like, times technically all happening at once type of thing. But Moiraine was like, what you're hearing isn't the previous dragons, because what you're tapping into, she was basically like, it's like candlelight in comparison to a raging sun. I was like, dude, these metaphors are, like, these high fantasy metaphors are so, like, I'm like, that, I love that just metaphor of just like you think, yes, you are powerful, but it's nothing in comparison to what the dragon can actually do. And so they try to fight him back, but sadly, he is able to attack back, and Karine shields the others and leaves herself open for attack and gets impaled. And in that moment, Steppen could feel her dying. And when the others finally do arrive, and everyone's just like ripping, like on the battlefield, the Aes Sedai are fighting everyone back. We even see that king dying. But ultimately, everyone meets up in the game, and Steppen tries to attack Loghain, because it's like, right, you killed the person that was so dear and important to him, you know? And because they even had that sweet moment earlier in the episode, because she's like, right, you're worrying about me, and she's like, you shouldn't be, you should rest. And he's like, well, I don't sleep, and I don't sleep a lot, so I have plenty of time to worry. And I was like, it's really sweet. Once again, getting that understanding, that time, because even Lan and Moiraine, we got to see that, like, that time to sit and breathe for them that we haven't really had. It's just been like one thing after another, like to see them kind of to just be themselves in that moment, once again showing that there's more to them than what their mission is and stuff like that, the deeper connection between an Aes Sedai and their ward. But in that moment, Loghain attacks and he hurts everyone, and Lan's throat gets slit, because like I think the axes shatter and the shards and weapons just like fly everywhere, and like Lan's throat gets slit. And Nynaeve there, I was expecting this on the battlefield, like she was going to kick in, but in this moment she was like, no, and Lan is about to die, and the power kicks in, and she releases it. And in that moment, it's like Logain sees what Moraine was saying. It's like the Raging Sun. I'm like, I thought so. I was like, I like because I was starting to second guess. I was like, I was like, the fact is he's all about being the Dragon Reborn. He's claiming, but it's like, yo, Nynaeve, she's the because there was the whole point that Nynaeve is definitely the fifth. I already had that feeling from the beginning that that's what it was, but yeah. And she releases that power once again, like he finally, it hits like, right, the Raging Sun. He felt that power. It pushed his power back. It ended up healing everyone, Liandry, Moraine, and even Lan. And in that moment, everyone came together to use their power, and they gentled him. They ripped all the power out of him that's supposed to belong to everyone else. So once again, he's alive. He's just a regular dude again. He doesn't have access to the magic. But also, this solidifies Nynaeve, being one of the five. So, and that's what the thing too, like, once again, all five of them have displayed power. Nynaeve is the one that's kind of flexed it this much. So once again, it still feels like it's like each one of them is tapping into the power in some shape or form, but no one's drawn into it the way she had. Because even Liandrin was willing to push herself. She was like, this man killed our sister, like, even if I have to. So I think maybe this is kind of like the way Liandrin's kind of presented herself before. Now I think this is going to shift her perspective on that. I mean, and the fact of the matter is that she didn't want to wait when it came to Logain anyway. I'm curious, like, what this means in comparison to, like, when it comes to the White Tower, like, her response, like, if it wasn't us being adherent to your rules, maybe our sister wouldn't be dead right now. To be fair, she's the one that kind of wanted to make it, and it kind of solidified some things of, like, well, it begs the question, like, I brought up, like, whether someone really let that happen, because Liandrin did say that she kind of wanted to let him loose so they'd have an excuse within the three oaths. It would allow them to kill him or gentle him if need be, kind of be judge, jury, and executioner in this regard. So it could be she let this all happen, but I don't know, because like Kareen, what happened to Kareen could be just like, it's not like she would know that was going to happen. She probably thought like, oh, we'd be able to rein him in, but I don't think anyone was responsible, because at first I thought they were, but I don't think that is the case. I think he had slowly been gaining back control. Like, you see him smirking at one point in time, because they were all drained holding him back, and because he wasn't even breaking a sweat. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where everything ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.